Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. What's going on, Sean?
Oh, not too much. I'm getting in that high school football mode, which means, by the way, high school football is around the corner. I think have your kids started school yet?
My youngest starts high school on Tuesday.
Okay,
He's a freshman. He starts high school.
It's always the barometer for me to know that King season's not far away. So
it's not far away.
It's approaching.
It is. Okay, and of course we have Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. What's going on?
Not too much. Another day in the life, I guess. Sean says it's not too far away. It does feel pretty far to me. I have like a little bit of an itch for basketball, and I guess I've been trying to scratch it with like WNBA and the NBL, and it doesn't hit quite the same, but it'll fill the void for now.
Well, we do have some basketball coming up. We're going to have EuroBasket, and just, I know Sabonis played yesterday, right? Just in a friendly in the build up to the EuroBasket competition. So we will have some basketball to watch, and you're just fingers crossed that nothing bad happens. But I want to see Sabonis, see if he starts pulling out the range and starts shooting from 3-point range, especially with, doesn't he play with Valanciunas?
Yeah, he does.
Just pulled up the stats. Apparently he shot one yesterday.
Did he hit that one?
He did not. Shouldn't have asked the question.
10,
6, and 3 on the day.
Oh no! Not only
how many shots did he take? Yeah, how many shots did he take?
He 5 of 7 from the field. Finland should not be able to check this guy. What's going on here?
That's what I mean. Yeah, Finland.
Yeah, he only played a few minutes, right?
23.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a little bit of run.
Yeah, that's interesting.
About to dissect this film and overreact to every little detail.
Yeah, there we go. We do need a deep dive into the EuroBasket, tune-up match from Domantas Sabonis.
Off the top of your head, is there anyone from Finland that we can name?
Oh,
it's a tough one.
I don't think so.
I can't think of anybody.
There was somebody.
Don't have an answer.
Okay. Well, while Brenden looks that up, if you are watching on YouTube right now, make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get up to 3,000 followers on the YouTube channel. We're growing like crazy, which is super fun. Also, I'm still wrangling a guest, but the Off the Record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour part, oh man, what are we at? Part 7? Part 8? I don't know. We'll figure that one out. That will be coming soon, so make sure to become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat. Even though it's the off season, we're still providing content at least 4 or 5 times a week, so that's good to see. I don't know. Outside of that, make sure that you're if you're listening on YouTube, on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, give us a rating and a review. Those things help us in the algorithm that has become our lives. Anyway, let's get to
the algorithm of your life.
Yeah, the algorithm is like, I don't know. I think it's destroyed modern humanity.
Scary.
So yeah. So Brenden, did you find anything on Sabonis here? What do you got?
There is on the
Finland
team.
Finland.
Yeah, there is one NBA player, Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, I was thinking Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah,
but I couldn't remember if he was Finlandish or if he was from a different Scandinavian country.
Another land.
Yeah. Yes. I've been watching Licorice Pizza all morning.
There you go.
I hate pulling on Brenden and saying I'm halfway through the film, but it's only because I started this morning and then we started the podcast. I'm intrigued so far. I'm confused so far. I think that's part of it, right? You're supposed to be intrigued and confused at the same time.
Let it unfold before you. And it's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, so I think that bears a little bit of a warning there, because it's not necessarily Wes Anderson, because Wes Anderson movies are just kind of strange and unusual. But Paul Thomas Anderson movies, which are great, they also require a little bit of patience, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't mind
Like
watching.
if you saw There Will Be Blood, it's a great movie, but it's a slow burn, man.
Oh yeah. That is a very
Totally
very
agree.
slow. You've never seen There Will
Never
Be
seen
Blood,
it.
have you?
No.
That's intense. Don't they do a lot in that film? Don't they do a lot of silent moments? Like, isn't like there's not a lot of background music? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dano
Yes.
performance, but my goodness, man, it's just like I said, slow burn, some moments of not a lot going on, and we're really selling it. Like you have to commit to that movie, and if you walk away, I think most people will walk away saying that's pretty intense, but that's a tough one. It's a tough watch for some people.
I've converted my wife to watching The Offer. So first she had to watch Godfather Part 1 again. It's been a long time since she's seen it. So we actually watched Godfather Part 1 last night. Brenden, you did get through it, right? We went through this, right?
I did.
Yeah.
In one sitting, I think. No, I might have split it into, I don't
Into
know.
4.
2 at most.
It's a long one, so I mean I get that, but yeah, I think that's the second time I've watched it in like the last 2 months. It's still a great film. Okay, so we have hit the dog days of summer. Everyone knows that. So sometimes we're going to talk movies, and if you don't want to listen to that, that's fine. There are other things you can do in your life and outside of watching or listening. We get it. But Sean, you put out a tweet yesterday, and the Sacramento Kings put out a bunch of pictures via social media of Arco Arena being dissolved, being completely deconstructed. Just give us your thoughts. It is kind of hard to watch, right? I know we have said goodbye to the building way too many times, and it's just kind of been an eyesore for the last, I don't know, like 6-7 years, just sitting out there with weeds growing in the parking lot, and the 6-man statue was buried behind a bunch of 7-foot tall weeds. But what were your thoughts and takeaways from just watching that thing getting demoed?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing for it, the lead up and all that stuff. Like, I didn't go out to the say goodbye thing because we already did that final night. I'd been out there during the pandemic and, like you said, seen the weeds, and that's when it was turned into a hospital and because of COVID. So, I've had the opportunity. I do feel a little of the frustration that our friend Damian Barling shared, because my point of my tweet last night was like, get it over with. the images of being, and again, I'm not an architect, so I understand. It's just me being this guy sitting in a chair, just lobbing heat at people who are doing big multi-million-dollar jobs. But that's what I do here. I'm just like seeing these, like, it slowly picked apart felt like a slow death. It's already been kind of a slow thing. Most buildings, and I think it doesn't happen this way because of the repurpose of the land or what, I don't know, but usually they just implode it and it just falls down, and it's like, there it went, and you kind of cheer it and yay, it's gone and good riddance and move on, right? And it's kind of what I was hoping for. I didn't think it was going to be like slowly picked apart, like a slow death where everyone's driving by and cringing at the sight of this once still shitty building that had just housed so many great memories that were just so timeless. And then you get nostalgic, and it's one thing to get nostalgic and say, okay, it's still there, it is, it's everything I remembered, and then it's another thing to walk by and see it going through this half-ass autopsy. So like, I know it's for the greater good. It's kind of a striking image to see it just picked apart the way it is.
I'm gonna guess that in California, in order to blow up a building, you have to have it probably costs a lot more to blow it up because of the potential for putting stuff into the air all around you, like the environmental impact of blowing up a building versus going out there with a bunch of tractors and knocking it down. I do think it's interesting to see how they're deconstructing it, because it's just weird to see from the outside looking in, like the back of the upstairs where you can see the stairs going down, or where the seats are upstairs, but sort of the back side of it. It's just a concrete, but it's still like, if you don't have a construction background at all, if you've never like demolished stuff, it's interesting to see it like torn open. It is. I don't know, Brenden, have you seen it?
I also, sorry, Brenden, I also have Gavin Malouf like in the back of my head. I remember being at a press conference with him one time, and they were talking about, and I was like, well, what would you like to, it's like, what do you like to see happen with the building or something? And he's kind of snickers, and he's just like, blow it up.
Blow it up.
So, like, he just said it, like, he's blow it up. Like, he didn't
But
care.
you remember, he's not the developer. That's George.
Right.
Goddamn George Malouf.
I think they should just fully commit to the bid at this point and just post progress pictures every day. Like, I just want to see daily progress, maybe twice a day. Like, why not? I'm totally with Damien, and I think it sounded like Sean was as well. Like, I don't have all that much, admittedly, of like an emotional connection to the building in the same way, but I feel like I've seen plenty of times where it's like, okay, say goodbye, and it's like, okay, are we saying goodbye or what's going on here? This is a complicated breakup.
Or it's a complicated death. That's what it's like. I'm not quite dead yet.
It's like it's just they are some triggering images, and I get what Damien's saying. I mean, he did kind of lose his cool there for a minute, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, you've got these moments where, like, I think because you have these staged organizational events that happen, like, hey, come say goodbye to the building. Most people did that already, you know, and they're going to do it again because it's going to implode, and they're providing another opportunity. Well, if you missed one, it gives you an opportunity, right? But again, it's like you're driving along the road, and it's like, well, look at that. Like, there's this building that's just being picked apart and looks weird. Like, it's definitely not something you see every day, whether it's an arena or a house. You just don't really see demolition sites as it is. But it's another thing to see a place that was this, is, you know, Vivek Ranadive likes to call arenas like the modern day cathedrals that brought everyone together and people come and meet and all this stuff. So it is, I get it. Like, whether you said goodbye to the building, you can't help how people feel. And, you know, I know Damien's had memories in those buildings as well. It's easy to move on. Other people don't. And again, it's one thing just to see it that way. And for me, I didn't think it would be triggering, but I'm looking at it like, my God, that looks weird. Like, this thing's just hanging out, and like, it looks like an apocalyptic type scene. So that's why I said I think it'd be easy to stomach if you just blew it up and congratulate, like, hey, clap, move on, and it's gone. Now it's like this slow death where it's just like, what does it look like 3 weeks from now? You know, hollowed out shell of nothing and abandoned and just weird. And again, it's just a sight you don't see every day. So
it won't take that long. It won't take it, you know, for the whole thing to be completely demolished. It will probably go, once you get, I mean, you got to worry about the glass. So a lot of that was taking out the glass fronts and stuff. But, you know, sort of the four corners of it will topple relatively quick, and you'll see that thing come down. I think it's interesting, though. Like, as someone who, like, worked on, you know, big buildings in downtown, like, it's not a pretty sight when you're building something like that. And then when you have to pull it back apart, it's even uglier, because, you know, concrete can look, you know, people go, oh, it's just concrete, but it can look really cool, and it can also look really bad. And we're kind of seeing, like, the deconstruction, what happens when you pull something apart that you had to put together in a way that would stay together forever. And so it's interesting. But at the same time, like I was telling Sean before we came on, I'm in the middle of deconstructing the entrance to my bar, this is where it's basically my workspace and my studio, but it's a functioning bar. I mean, I have like a 12-foot long bar, like, top here.
So you've got a wrecking ball outside ready to just take out a wall.
Well, okay, so, like, I've been honest with people on here. Like, I was on blood thinners forever, so I wasn't able to get to any of my projects this summer. And then when you start doing a project like this, because the plan, it's more based on building exterior, like, bookshelves that will move. Like, I'm trying to make a secret entrance to the bar, and also give myself some, like, noise buffer and stuff like that, so the rest of the house can function while I'm in the bar doing things like 4 hours of radio, like I will tomorrow, or podcasting like this. But I have this really wide opening, and in order to build the bookcases the way I want it, where they'll fold out and kind of collapse, I have to shorten the entrance, like narrow the entrance into my bar, and so I have to do some deconstruction. And it's just been a while because I haven't, I had back problems all last summer, and then this summer, I've been on blood thinner. So anyway, I started the project, and then I had like in the first probably half hour, like a major catastrophe. I used a shop vac, and for some reason the shop vac decided to blow all the sheetrock dust. It sucked it into the canister and blew it out the other side. So I literally coated my entire house with white dust, like this giant poof. Like, oh no, that's not good. So I understand what's happening there, and I can, like, how big of a mess it's gonna make. And I don't even know how many dump trucks full of stuff and where that stuff goes and all that. It's just, in California, it's complex because it's not just pulling something apart like a giant building or just imploding it, because that stuff has to go somewhere at some point. Now, I don't. Brenden, have you been to Arco? Have you been inside?
No, actually. My first reaction or first time seeing Arco was probably driving to the airport and being like, this is where the stadium was at, to be honest.
Yeah.
Very in the middle of nowhere.
It's right off the side of the freeway. Well, when Sean and I were young, it was just sitting out there by itself. Like, they built up all around it. Like, this stuff, it is slightly disguised from the freeway now, but it used to just be like a giant, like, square sitting out in the middle of nowhere and like a little bit raised. Sean, what's your best memory? This was going to be, we'll just do it, the business of basketball. What was your best memory of Arco?
For me, it's the moment they beat the Mavericks and moved to the Western Conference Finals, because it was the loudest that I had ever experienced the building, because I wasn't there when they came back from the playoff win in Seattle, the Mitch Richmond, Brian Grant days, and everyone lost their mind. I saw it on television. It was incredible, but the moment that they beat the Mavericks, to me, was easily the loudest I'd ever heard the building. So much so that I was working for KHTK at the time. I literally just held out a microphone and recorded the audio of the crowd. It was just that loud, and you couldn't hear the da na 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 hey, whatever that stupid song is, and it was, you couldn't really hear it, and the place was just freaking raucous. It was great. I think that's my favorite. I've experienced so many concerts in there, and I was trying to remember, like, my first memory was in that building might have been Barnum and Bailey Circus before even a Kings game. If I it was either a Kings game or it was Barnum and Bailey, and I can't remember which, because I think I got to see Jordan play so many times in that building, and that's always going to be something that
Jordan versus Richmond.
Yeah, just unbelievable matchup. So, that's probably it for me. I mean, great concerts though. I've seen Green Day twice in there, and Elton John, and saw Dr.
U2
Dre and Ice Cube,
yeah.
and I saw it was the Eminem, all them together. My goodness,
your friend Ice
just
Cube.
A lot of them. My good friend Ice Cube. That's right.
Or
Yeah,
as Sean calls it, it's just Cube.
It's just Cube these days. Yep.
How do you guys? Because obviously I've heard that stadium gets super loud. I believe there's some sort of record, right?
Oh yeah, Guinness Books of World. They brought out a Guinness dude. Yeah.
How do you? Because obviously, like Sean, the moment you talked about beating the Mavs, going to the Western Conference Finals, like, I'm sure there's a balance of how much it has to do with the acoustics of the building and just the moment. But how do you think the acoustics kind of compared to now with Golden One Center?
Oh, night and day. I mean, that place, they called it was Arco Arena, but so many people would refer to it as Echo Arena. It wasn't the best place to hear a concert, particularly if it's very bassy. If you're hearing even hip hop, it's going to be very, very echoey. And to the Maloof's credit, when they got in there, and it made a huge difference, man. They really tried to fix a lot of the acoustics in that building. The best part about Golden One Center is the sound of that building. You can hear, even if you're at a Kings game, you can hear everything Scott Moak says. we had a game night host. Well, the Kings did, but I'm saying James and I experienced this when you're at the arena, whether be it Big Mike, Jennifer Santich, who was out there, a former Kings dancer, you couldn't understand her. Like, it was really tough. You would have a high pitched. She had a very kind of a high pitched voice, and if you're in the arena, you could barely understand anything she said. I mean, you can hear the clarity of anyone speaking, and it just doesn't really reverberate or echo throughout the building. So, if you haven't been to a concert at Golden One Center, you're
missing out.
Yeah, man. Especially if it's somebody you want to see, or if there's a bucket lister that's come through. It's an entirely different experience. Even if you go down somewhere like SAP Center, which is admittedly much better than what Arco was, but that and Oracle Arena in Oakland, can't hold a flame to what Golden One Center is. And I'm actually, I've been to the finals. I've been to several games. Been to all the Warriors postseason now for Chase Center. Chase Center sounds great. I think Chase Center is very comparable. I'm going to go to my first Chase Center concert later this month. I'm going to go see the Killers, so I will have a full report on how it sounds to Golden One Center. But Golden One Center is fantastic, and it's best arena that I've been in, especially for a concert setting.
Yeah, so Brenden, because you don't know so much of the history of the building. So they built Arco 1, which was a tilt-up building. So basically they poured cement slabs on the ground and then tilted them up and fastened together to make a big box. That's Arco 1, which is right down the street from Arco 2. People drive by it all the time and wouldn't even know. It's a Department of Consumer Affairs, and it used to be, what did it house? Like 10,300 people, Sean, when they first moved here? I think that's what it is. It's not very big at all.
Right.
So they tilted that up really quickly, and then right down the street, which it's, if I'm not mistaken, Arco 2, one of them is in Sacramento County, and one of them is in Sacramento City. So they're both in the county, but one of them is within the city limits, and one of them isn't. And I think it's a second one that isn't within city limits. So then that way they could do different things without having to worry about the city ordinances. It was a big mess. Anyway, the second building...
10,333.
10,333. Yeah, that's right. 10,300. Yeah. So when they built Arco 2, it was the same group of dudes, and basically it was a land grab. All of the area out there that you see, the whole Natoma, is where all of, like, I don't know, where Walmart is and Target and everything off the freeway right there at Truxell. That was all unincorporated farmland. And the deal was that in order to move the team here and to build the arenas, they allowed the investors to convert the unincorporated farmland into commercial property and residential property. And that's how it was a gigantic land grab, basically. So building the arena, I think Arco 2 cost, I want to say it was $65 million to build. And then they got to the end and they were broke, and they didn't have enough to do the acoustical finish inside. So there was supposed to be, like, batting on the ceiling to keep the sound in so it didn't just bounce and go crazy. But ownership group ran out of money. And to be honest, they never really had money again. That group, they made a bunch off of the land, but then, like, to build out the arena, they just kind of left it that way. And so it was really, really echoey, but it was also phenomenal for trapping in sound and having sound bounce back and forth. And, like, when you went to a playoff game there, the whole building felt alive. No question. Like you walk around and you can feel the sound. It was so wild. I remember, was it Elston Turner, who they said they could hear it so loud in the locker room, which is underneath the stands, that it was like deafening. They're like, we can't even hardly hear in the locker room. This is nuts. And I was at the 1995-96 playoff series against Seattle. Absolutely incredible. Actually, it was a lot of fun because when you're driving in, you have all these Kings fans, but there were a ton of Seattle fans too that traveled, and these giant green flags everywhere. But even at that time, they didn't have multiple entrance and exits. They only had two. They had screwed up in the way. So Truxell, that main strip, wasn't even there. So you had to, like, everyone got off at Northgate and then got in a bottleneck and got stuck, or they got off I-5 at Del Paso and tried to get over there. And it was just a mess. What we see now and how sort of the modern freeway system and the modern street system around that completely changed. So anyway, they ran out of money, and that's why it was such a bad arena for concerts, but a phenomenal arena for basketball. I mean, and the wooden, like the whole lower bowl was wooden stanchions, so fans would pound their feet and do the Arco Thunder, and that was something they wanted to do when they built Arco 1. They did it, and they built wooden stanchions there on the cheap. And then when they built Arco 2, there was so much noise that was generated from those wooden floors that they did it at Arco 2 as well. As far as the development of the building itself, they're like, oh, we got to do the wooden floors so we can have the Arco Thunder feel, which is lost at Golden 1, which is one downfall. It's just like pitter patter on
well, you don't have
floors.
that. You don't have that noise meter on the side of King's Vision anymore, and you used to see the little things that popped off the top. You don't really have that. So I think people's goal was always to. I don't think they realized that it didn't really make a difference, but they were trying to get that noise meter up, and at least you had something visual.
It was a fun building. I mean, the last, because I think I covered 4 years there. It was a whole, maybe 5 years, right? I think Golden One Center opened in 2015. But even when Vivek bought the team, he did a bunch of work inside the building just to get it to upgrade it to where we could get the extra couple of years out of it, waiting for the new arena to be built. And he did a lot of nice things. Like,
well, it was necessary, man. I mean, the NBA standards were that. I mean, you look at just that visiting locker room alone, and some of the stuff that they poured into it. I mean, it
wasn't that much better.
No, it wasn't. But I mean, it did make a huge difference, even in a temporary setting. Yeah.
Yeah. So Brenden, the workroom in Golden One Center is twice the size of the visiting locker room. The workroom and the back room. Yeah. It was a nightmare. So yeah. So I think my favorite, like that first series was amazing. I got to see a couple of like the 2001, 2002 playoff runs. I was in the building for those. I think one of my favorite was I was at the final game of, the 98-99 season, when John Stockton retired. So his final regular season game. And then in the playoffs, I was at the playoff game as well. And watching a visiting team give a guy a standing ovation was just such an amazing sign of respect for John Stockton.
And James, if you remember in that playoff game when they did that, both he and Malone walked off the floor together. They had both subbed out at the same time, and they're walking off, and you see Kings fans recognize the moment. Like, Kings are moving on. They've just ended the career of John Stockton, maybe even Karl Malone, because I mean he went to the Lakers next. But no one really knew like what was in store for him. But the last two times they were Jazz teammates walking off the floor was at Arco Arena. That was a pretty special moment.
Yeah, and it's also one of those moments where it ended. That was the end of that dynasty of the Utah Jazz. And for people who they didn't win a championship, but it was because they played in the Jordan era. That was a team that could have won 2 or 3 championships. They were that good. So it was interesting to watch sort of the end of an era. I got to see a ton of great games there. A lot of stuff. Like, I remember going in when I was super young and like Ralph Sampson signed an autograph. He signed, I think, my ticket, which was cool. But I mean, he was so incredibly tall. That was the first. And I saw Manute Bol play. That was fun. And then one time I snuck down on the floor and was like 4 rows up because we saw some seats that were open and we snuck down. And it was against the Jazz, and watching like Thurl Bailey and Karl Malone and seeing just how tremendously huge Karl Malone was, it was different. So,
what's the loudest you guys have heard Golden One so far? I think mine, and I haven't been close to him as many games as you guys, is weirdly Bagley's Summer League dunk. I thought the building got really loud for that one. And it was just, I think there was maybe obviously some skepticism around Bagley, but there was also a lot of hype at the time. It was his first game, and they were playing the Lakers. He dunked on the Lakers' first round.
Yeah. I think for me, it's Bogey's game winner against the Lakers.
Makes sense.
Yeah, probably.
That's the one where it was. I mean, it's natural. It's not a. It's just like one of those absolutely instinctual, natural reactions from a crowd reacting to an incredible play.
I think
probably it.
The one other, so the first 4 years were complete sellouts, Brendan. Like you couldn't get a ticket, so the building was always packed, and so if you had like a good play, it usually got pretty noisy. I think the other one is when Scott Moak summoned DeMarcus Cousins back out of the locker room. That was one where Cousins was ejected for spitting his mouthpiece at the Spurs bench, and he kept saying that it fell out of his mouth, which the video evidence says slightly different, but he gets tossed from the game, and he was having an incredible game, and then Scott Moak called him back out. That was one of those moments where like the place went nuts as he came out of. I mean, it was basically the Kings' Willis Reed moment, or
like the Undertaker coming out from the. It's like, oh, that's the Undertaker's music, and here he comes running out of the the tunnel. I'm not a wrestling guy, but I will also say, like, just for concert purposes, and I wasn't at the show because I'd seen it so many times already, but it's kind of like this if you were there moment where Travis Scott was here, and Travis Scott the show was just unbelievable at Golden One, that Astroworld tour that came through, and I was at the Kanye show where he walked off the platform. But before that, the crowd was incredible because it was him and Kid Cudi, and Kid Cudi and him had a beef, and they had a falling out, and now they're not on terms again anymore either. But he started the show, came out, he had Kid Cudi on with him, and the whole time I'm thinking, that's not Kid Cudi. Like the first few minutes of it, I was like, that's not Kid Cudi. He's like trolling or something. And certainly it ended up being Kid Cudi, and he went on for 4 songs, started ranting, and then left, and it was quite a scene.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of concerts there. I think it's either 10 or 11 concerts I've seen so far at Golden One. It's an incredible venue. And
I'm reminded by looking behind me, by the way, right there. You were talking about Arco Arena memories. That Kanye West glow in the dark poster that I have is one of the best concerts I'd ever seen, and it was started with Lupe Fiasco, NERD, Rihanna, and Kanye West, and that was that came through Arco Arena.
Wow. Yeah, but Brendan, it got to a point where concerts wouldn't come through anymore. Like major concerts wouldn't come through because Arco was so bad, and it just kept getting worse, and they didn't really have like the start treatment rooms. So like there are rooms at Golden One Center, that lounges and stuff that we don't get our hands on, that are for big acts, and they come in, and that just wasn't Golden One anymore, and they couldn't sell out multiple tickets. I mean multiple concerts. A lot of big big name performers want to sell out 2 or 3 nights at an arena and like stay in a city and then move to the next one, and you couldn't do that with Arco. That just like everything had died down so much because the building was so bad. Anyway, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Arco Arena and the demolition. I'm sure
Damian Barling.
Damian's going to be pissed about that. Sorry, Damian. We said our goodbyes again. I didn't need to say a goodbye. Like I went and got seats when they were I have seats up in my game room upstairs from Arco, like some blue seats that I built like stanchions for, and they're our game room upstairs. So yeah, I said my goodbyes like the final games, and I didn't feel like I needed to go back. But yeah, interesting stuff. While we were on the show here, it does appear that they are going to retire league-wide the number 6 worn by Bill Russell. And so that's something that's going to happen. They're going to grandfather in some players that currently have number 6. But that's a pretty big deal. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
For Sacramento, 6 has already been retired for the 6-man, so won't really have a huge thing here, but I think it's a brilliant move by the NBA to honor such a great man in Bill Russell, and it's the only one that's had his, you think of Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all these guys that have come through. None of those guys have had it's the first time they've actually retired a number league-wide, much like, 42 is retired in Major League Baseball for Jackie Robinson. So he's the equivalent, in my opinion, to that and what he stood for and what he was. So if there was ever anyone you're going to do it for, number 6 is absolutely the one to do it. I think it's a tremendous act and for them to do, and in honor of a great man. And letting LeBron changes his number quite a few times already. So to let him play it out, sure. It wouldn't surprise me to see him change his number again before the start of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. Didn't they try to do this with Jordan in a way? Or Miami did it themselves and were hoping people would follow? Am I remembering this right?
I think so. I think that's why LeBron wears number 6, right? Because he originally was 23. I think you're right. I think they did try to...
I believe Miami has 23 retired for Jordan.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, I obviously very much appreciate everything Bill Russell stood for, and I think that his impact goes so far beyond just on the court, and that's why this makes a lot of sense to me. But it'll be interesting to see, is this just a one-off thing, or is there going to be one or two other people in the future that they do the same thing for? I don't know. Interesting. Very surprising. I didn't think they would do this for someone. It makes sense, of all people, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, he was a groundbreaker, though, in so many different ways. So, I mean, I understand it. Plus, longevity. Wilt was incredible. Put up much bigger stats than Bill Russell, but didn't win all of the championships. And I think this is one where you're retiring a number not for just his play on the court, but for what he meant for the game. And I think that Jordan would be the one that I would, kind of be surprised if they didn't go that way at some point. But I don't think they will. I think that they'll probably stick with one number. And how many numbers do the Kings have retired? They've retired Pages and Vlade, and so 21, 16.
You're talking about in the Sacramento era?
4. They've retired, total. They've retired Mitch's number, 2. They've retired Jack Twyman and Maurice Stokes, right?
Yeah.
And then
so the numbers, you almost have them all.
And Oscar.
So you got 1, 2, 4, 6, 11, 12, 14, 16, 21, 27, and 44.
Okay. Interesting. So now number 6 can't wear number 6. Well, but what Sean said, you couldn't wear it.
Yeah, it was already
anyways.
for the 6-man.
Yeah.
Which, is there any other team that did something like that? I felt like that 6-man thing was weird to me.
I think there is, actually. I'm trying to remember who somebody else had done it.
Does Seattle do that with the Seahawks? I know it's a different sport, but
the 12th man?
Have, yeah.
Probably. No, because what was Russell Wilson's number?
I do not know.
I
thought that was a weird decision in the first place.
In Sacramento, though, it was different because the fan base was, again, 19
Seahawks,
of the first. Go ahead.
Seahawks do have 12 retired for the fan.
Okay. So 19 of the first 21 seasons were 100% sellouts. Again, getting a ticket at Arco Arena was nearly impossible. I've told this story before. When I was younger, I would hitchhike into. I didn't live that far from the arena. I would hitchhike into the arena so I didn't have to pay parking, and I would buy standing room only tickets for $4 by myself. I would just go to games and hang out because the atmosphere is crazy, and then you could always go find a seat because someone doesn't show up. So I would go to games. Because you got nothing going on. Might as well go catch a game. It's fun. Sit there and watch basketball. I did that, I don't know, maybe a handful of times when I was young. Anyway, all right. So, yeah, I mean, do you guys think should they retire another jersey outside of Russell? I mean, do you think that, or should they just stick with a team-based thing?
You're talking about league wide?
Yeah.
If they did it for Jordan, I'd be totally on board with that. You're right, Brendan. The Miami Heat did retire Jordan's number, but yeah, if they did, I'd be totally cool with it. I know 23 is such a popular number, though, and you've had so many people wear it in honor of Jordan. And I kind of wonder if you pulled Jordan aside, if I know he feels himself a little bit, kind of a little egomaniac, a little bit. So
just a little bit, Sean.
Yeah. As he should, even
Yeah.
the competitive nature that he has. But I truly wonder if he would be. I think he'd be totally fine with other people. I think he'd almost get a bigger kick out of seeing people wear his jersey in honor of him. I mean, famously, obviously, LeBron James was the guy that wore 23 in honor of him. So. I would think that that's a bigger honor in his mind than having 23 retired in every building. But, yeah. I don't know.
It feels too late to do that. Like, if you were going to do it when Miami did. Like, I don't know. There's already so many people that have worn 23. And, I don't know. In my mind, there's bigger numbers look weird. And I don't want to retire all the numbers that look good on jerseys, to be honest. I feel like bigger numbers are weird, and if you retire too many, all of a sudden you're just like not left with all that much. And I guess I'm thinking far too in advance, and Sacramento doesn't really have to worry about this problem right now, but
you can always go past 99. You can get 100, 101.
Can you?
Sure.
Are you allowed to?
I mean, no, you're not allowed to, but I'm saying all it takes is the commissioner to say, hey, we're running out of numbers, time to open it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think 23 is so iconic. I think if we think of numbers, player numbers, I mean, you remember, like, what, Bird is 33, Magic Johnson's 32.
32.
You have the numbers that Kobe wore, which is 8 and 24, right?
Yeah.
Keon Ellis is 34.
Here we go.
Keon Ellis, 34.
There's
Who else
the
wore
drinking
34
game.
in Sacramento?
Corliss Williamson did.
Yeah, Corliss. And he wore 4 and 34.
He wore 4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when Weber came on board. I want to say Michael Smith. Michael the Animal
Otis
Smith.
Thorpe. Did Otis Thorpe wear 34?
Oh, I thought Otis Thorpe was 36. I might be wrong. Yeah. So, I mean, iconic numbers. I mean,
Jason Thompson.
Oh, man, we forgot the player with the most games in Sacramento Kings history. The longest tenured Sacramento
Otis
King.
Thorpe.
No Otis Thorpe.
Interesting. Yeah, there is a page you can look at where it has every single number.
Otis
Tony
Thorpe was 33.
Massenberg.
Tony Massenberg. Oof,
Yeah.
that's a good pull, Sean.
Ricky Berry. In the Sacramento era, it was Ricky Berry, Bill Winnington, LeBradford Smith, Michael Smith, Corliss Williamson, Tony Massenberg, and Jason Thompson.
Okay, so I was right. It was, Brian Grant wore 33 and Michael Smith wore 34. So, yeah, interesting.
Keon Ellis, greatest number 34 in Sacramento Kings history, on the way.
All right.
Okay. Take it.
He's convinced. You know what? That brings us. We're gonna. What is the? We'll start with Brendan. Brendan, what is the most exciting position battle that you want to see play out? It can be like just for minutes or for a starting job, but like, which one stands out when you're like, man, I can't wait to see what happens there.
I think it's the two guards, but almost constricting it to like calling it two guards is weird to me because I think that like Davion is intriguing to me as well. I feel like there's one spot left in the closing lineup. Like I feel like Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, and Domantas Sabonis are obviously in there. I personally think that Keegan is going to be as well. Or so maybe there's two spots, but between like Keegan and Herter is probably where I would go more often than not. But I think that there's going to be a night where Malik Monk makes a lot of sense. I think there's going to be a night where Davion Mitchell works alongside De'Aaron Fox, and he's so impactful on the defensive end, it's hard to take him off the floor. Like Terrence Davis has his moments. So I think that there's a lot of good options at the two-guard spot. I think the backup four is intriguing to me, but I think that's more so I don't think that there's all too many great options. So the two spot interests me a little bit more because I think there's a variety of different options that provide different things on the floor.
Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think I don't think it's any of the starting battles. I don't really see much of a starting battle there. Like, I would
There's kind of
probably
like two options, right? I mean, we
yeah.
kind of.
I think, like I said, like if I'm running the team, thank God we're not. But yeah, I would start Keegan Murray right away.
Yep.
I don't know that that'll happen though. I'm not convinced that that'll happen. But I think he will end up being your starter this season, regardless of how that plays out. But I don't really feel like that's I don't think that's one of the groupings that I'm looking at and have the most intrigue by. I think the one I have the most intrigue by is how they play the 2-3 scenarios. I think it's pretty clear to me that it's going to be Kevin Huerter as a starter at the 2. I think he's definitely going to play minutes at the 3. And I think there's moments where you're going to see him and Monk on the floor together. So I think that's fine. To me, I have more of a question mark around some of what happens with somebody like Terrence Davis, because I can kind of see him not playing at all. So I think those are the position battles that are a little bit more intriguing to me. I still have a little bit of a question mark of what happens with Rashawn Holmes and how that plays out. So these are all things that will kind of unfold in training camp and preseason and all that. And I do think that Mike Brown's going to keep a pretty tight rotation. I don't think we'll see that necessarily in the preseason. However, I think you're going to see a lot of guys play in the preseason. At least I would imagine. I think it's going to have opportunity for guys, because you're going to want to see somebody play along somebody and see if it works and have a sample size. And I know you don't have a lot of preseason games, but I don't think these preseason games are necessarily going to replicate what you see in the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, I'm kind of down with. I want to see who makes the final roster. That's one of my position battle thing, because I think right now we see the Dellavedova, Quinn Cook situation playing out. I think we're going to see Chima Moneke and KZ Okpala, and I'll even throw in Chimezi Metu. Two of those guys I think will make the roster. One of the point guards I think will make the roster. But that's kind of the one where I think this is one of those years where you at least have some intriguing names at that back end. I mean, it's always possible that Kent Bazemore doesn't make the roster. I mean, just like, to be totally honest, I mean, I think he will, but there's potential there for him not, just because you got a bunch of younger players that have kind of, they're part of the Mike Brown sort of tree. So there's a possibility, but I want to see if Chima Moneke not only can like stun some people, and earn a roster spot, but also if he can actually sort of unseat somebody and make it to the rotation somehow. And I don't know how, even if it's in a minor role, like a 10 to 12 minutes a game type situation. But that's kind of what I'm walking into camp with. I think we know that, like, Keegan Murray is going to start at some point. I think he's going to play 28 minutes a game as a rookie, maybe a little bit more at the 4. So I'm not so concerned about that. I'm not, Sabonis is clearly going to play like 35 minutes. There's some question marks about who can play the 4 and how many minutes you're going to give to this guy or that guy. How many minutes can you steal at the 3 to give the guards extra minutes? Like, all of those are intriguing to me, but I want to see who kind of makes it out of the that lower tier, that group of players that are NBA hopefuls, or whether they're veterans or they're young guys trying to make it.
I've seen some people on socials like suggesting like, oh, keep Bazemore and Moneke and like cut Alex Len. I'm like, this makes no sense to me. I think that keeping that third string big is important, especially when Holmes is somebody that you would consider moving on from. I think having that extra big is important. I think it's easy to forget that I think Alex Len is like a pretty quality backup big. I think some teams were getting away with him as a starting big, and I don't know that that's ideal, but I think he's a quality player. And to me, like, it has to come down to Cook and Dellavedova, and then Bazemore versus Monecki.
He just was not good last year, though.
Alex?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
And so, I can see, if you
He
had
did.
to.
That's a good point. He did have a lot going on.
No, he did, but I mean, that's also part of the second half of the, latter part of the season. Like, he wasn't good even to the start. Like, I didn't think he was a positive for them. But part of it too is like if you're looking at the roster and there's guys that maybe you would rather not have, I can see the people carving him out and saying, like, I don't think you release him, but I think, when you're having conversations with other teams and trying to move on from a guy, figure it out. You figure out your roster. It's tough. It's tough. That's why, like guaranteeing Trey Lyles, for example, right? It's such a small amount of money.
You had to.
Wise, you had to do it, right? So you still have him on roster, but it's a very movable piece if you put a package together. It's like he's a toss-in, and maybe that team ends up cutting him if they don't need him, whatever, and then he can go find whatever. But, I don't see anybody being stretched or cut, right now.
Yeah, see, that's an interesting, what Sean brings up there is Trey Lyles and Alex Len together is $6.7 million. You can go up 25% plus $100K. So you can almost go up to, a $8.5 million player just for those two. So there's no way, I don't think there's any way you'll see Alex Len get cut because he's going to have value as an expiring contract during the season. And, it's good to have a $2.6 million player, a $4 million player, a $1.8 million player, a $2.2 million player. It's good to have all of those salary slots. So when you go to make a deal and you need to move pieces around, they can kind of fit in. I mean,
Which is exactly what just happened with Harkless and Justin Holiday.
Yeah. So my point would be if you look at, what is it, $18.3 million for Harrison Barnes. Now you start adding in the 6.7 that you've got. So what's that? 19. That's $25 million right there, right? Wow, I think exactly $25 million. If you look at the package of Harkless and of Len and Lyles and Harrison Barnes. So again, now we can go up 25% on that. So that's a lot of money. It's like you can go up like $6 million there, plus $100K. So you can go up to like $31 million in salary that you can take back just with those three players. And I don't think you're going to get something like spectacular, but I also think that if there's a team that decides that they're not going to compete and don't want to compete, and they have a player or two that they're ready to move on from, you might be able to swing a deal that goes and gets you like some players that fit better. And so I don't think you're going to see some of these guys, like the bigger contracts, the bigger of the small contracts, I don't think will get moved. I think they'll be on the roster on opening day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure does. Yeah, makes sense to me. That's why that's exactly what you have in mind when you do it. And, as you approach trade deadlines and teams decide whether they're in or they're out, and those are the decisions that get made, so. Yeah, I agree. It's nothing spectacular that you're going to bring in, but it could be an impactful player for sure.
Yeah, even like the combination of Rashawn Holmes and Len and Trey Lyles, that can fetch you like a $20 million player. And there might be a team that says, okay, we'll take on 2.5 years of Holmes and then save another bunch of money on expiring contracts, upwards of $10 million that you can save in order to give up a player that, isn't part of their future.
Yeah, I think Harrison Barnes, the way that they acquired Harrison Barnes is somewhat similar. It was Dallas feeling like it was time to move on from him, and their matching salaries that Sacramento sent out, Zebo and Justin Jackson, weren't exactly contributors. It was just primarily matching salary.
Well, Zebo wasn't a contributor at all. They'd sent
Right.
Zebo home that year, and they were paying him, $12 million or $13 million. That's what I'm talking about. I think there are going to be those moves. There are always those types of moves where you can go out and get a guy who's on a 2, 3, 4 year deal that just doesn't work or doesn't fit. So I think this year specifically, there hasn't been a lot of movement, but you start circling December 15th when a lot of these guys that were signed or acquired during the summer can be moved again. Yeah, that kind of brings me to the other point that we're seeing this weird situation. We talked a little bit about the Durant situation on the last pod, but now we're seeing that, first of all, the Nets are asking for astronomical craziness. The Celtics rumor this morning was they asked for Brown and Tatum for Durant. Yeah, that's not, yeah. But it leads us to like a larger global conversation in the NBA about players trying to call their shots. And like, not only does he want out of Brooklyn, but he really likes the Celtics and he really likes Philadelphia. Like, to what end? Where do we go with this? Where you got players who are on, I mean, he's under contract for what, like 4 years and almost $200 million, and he doesn't want to be there. That's number one. But number two, he's starting to say, well, this is where I'd like to go. This is where I'd like to go. And like, when does this end? Like, how do we get to a spot? And is this, I guess, maybe a better question, is this killing the star, that where teams are chasing the big three type deal?
I don't have much issue with it. Like, I think that him expressing the places that he wants to go, like, I don't see much of a problem with that. I feel like Kawhi did something similar, and it doesn't stop teams like Toronto, not on that list, from still acquiring him. And you just like know ahead of time that we'll have to try to pitch him to stay. He doesn't want to be here initially. And maybe you can't convince him, or maybe you can't, and it still feels worth the risk. Like,
but you're pitching, I'm just going to point out, you're pitching a guy who's under contract for 4 years at almost $200 million that he's got to, whether or not he stays. I think that's my point.
I think it's different of if a team is like, no, we're not going to move you, is he still going to suit up and play the games no matter? Like, I think it's a different situation if he were to completely hold out, where if, like, you can want to be moved, but if the team doesn't want to move you, then that is what it is, and I still think he should go out there and play. So if that's happening, like, I don't have too much issue with it personally.
I mean, Kevin Durant, we talked about, is, one of the top few players in the NBA, and him doing this is a bit of an anomaly, maybe. I don't love when I don't mind guys demanding trades. I really don't, because, an organization can trade you at a drop of a hat. You do have guaranteed contracts in the NBA, so this isn't quite the NFL. But to the point of, like, being able to pick your destination, I mean, rewind where, the Spurs and Kawhi Leonard, okay? It's kind of probably the first time you saw it get ugly between a team and a player, where there's just not going to be where you got a guy basically sitting out and being away from a team and just waiting for him to be moved. To that point, like, they traded him to the betterment of their team, and they do so by moving him to Toronto at the time. Toronto wins a championship, and famously. With Durant, you have to understand, like, the agents are behind a lot of these trades, meaning that they do the legwork on so many of these trades, these scenarios, and to bring it to the team. Now, they work in hand to try to make something happen, but as we talked about in the last podcast, despite the tweet that Joe Tsai put out there, Sean Marks may not be there in a month. It's very possible. So you almost need to rely on the guys like Rich Kleiman to find these deals to move. And again, it's unusual, especially considering you've got a guy who's got team control. You don't have these early opt-outs that, like, LeBron famously puts in his deals. So with KD being, and again, I also think people don't realize that, like, the money that KD makes, yes, that's a lot of money. We get it, and he loves to play. Fortunately, he loves to play basketball, but he also makes way more money in his Nike contract. Like, the guy makes an obscene amount of money with his Nike contract, so he's made a ton of money. If it got ugly, it would shock me to see him not play and sit out and ruin his kind of the legacy, because he is in the prime of his career. But you don't really have a whole lot of leeway there. But again, when you say you want to go to Boston, if you're Brooklyn, you're like, hell yeah, that's a good return of somebody. If I'm moving Kevin Durant, I can get a pretty good return as opposed to moving him to maybe Miami or maybe to Cleveland or something like that. Even Phoenix. Like Phoenix is a one that still I don't feel is going where. In fact, I still think Phoenix makes the most sense to move him because you look at someone like Devin Booker and you would definitely want him back. So whether it happens or not remains to be seen. But you're going to try to find the best situation for your team first and foremost, but a lot of those tend to work out favorably towards Kevin Durant's camp as well. With the Spurs thing, I was always like, hey, when it came to Kawhi Leonard, if the Spurs are doing the right thing, I'd be like, all right, ruin your life, ruin your career. We'll trade you when we feel like we can get something the most for you. I think they did. I think they found a deal that worked for them. I still don't think they got enough, if you're asking me. I mean, they didn't, and I think it's pretty fair. And you literally gave Toronto a championship, but
I think it's because they tried to stay relevant. They tried to get a win now piece back, and I think more often than not, those type of trades, it's like teams need to be going in opposite directions.
Well, and it was also the Spurs. Like, think about that. Like you've got a superstar player thumbing his nose at literally Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford, who's been like the gold standard for better part of 2 decades. So that's something that's pretty rare. It's not necessarily a messed up situation like a Clippers or even a Lakers where there's been so much turmoil or whatever, or even the Kings where fortunately you haven't really had guys, if they've requested trades, have made it kind of small and it's not something where they're refusing to show up and refusing to play.
Yeah, I mean, we have like the Buddy Hield sort of request.
Right.
And it was more behind the scenes request, and it was like, okay, if we can find a spot for you, we'll find a spot for you.
Right.
If we can't,
and
he show
still
up
played.
and play.
Yeah.
And he played every day. I mean, Buddy Hield wants to play every
He wanted to
day.
play more. Yeah, he wanted to play more.
Well, I mean, they did incentivize him playing. I mean, that was one thing. He had it. His incentives, one of them was that he played, I think it's 70 or 72 games. I think it was 70 games in the season. And Buddy Hield's only missed like 4 games his entire career. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't like that, like, sort of the league is being held hostage by this situation. But then again, it's August, and it's good for the league, I guess, to have your name mentioned every single day as a potential, trade partner or whatever. I mean, you're getting business drummed up during a dead time of the year, which I think, the NBA has always kind of been like, they like having their name out there as much as possible, just like, the Sacramento Kings like having their name out there as much as possible. At least this group does. Yeah, I just think it does seem to, at some point, I mean, there should be, I don't like, if you sign a contract, you sign a contract. And I know that in the NBA, they can just trade you, but it's not the NFL where they can just cut you and pay you pennies on the dollar. I mean, you're going to get your money no matter where you are. So, yeah, it's intriguing to me. So
I just don't see this becoming what we just saw with Ben Simmons this past year. Like, that would shock me. That would shock me. Kevin Durant's going to play basketball, and if he's still on the Nets, he's going to play with the Nets. I just don't see him being like, nah, trade me, I'm going to sit out. Like, because really, if that's a staring contest you want to get into, Kevin Durant would lose. Like, if you really, like, if Kevin Durant's not playing basketball for the Nets, then the Nets don't have to move him, and it's probably better off not playing with anybody else either. Yeah, you're paying him a ton of money. We get that. But if that's a staring contest that he wants to get into, the league without Kevin Durant would be probably a better return than what the Nets could really, really get anyway. And you're only hurting he's only hurting his own value. So again, I just don't think that it wouldn't even just surprise me. It would be unbelievable of a shocker to me to see him hold out.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between those two deals that you're talking about when you bring up Ben Simmons played a completely different card. It wasn't that I don't want to play, it's that I have mental health issues. And
correct.
So he sat down, and so when you're talking about a player who doesn't want to play, well, they can just start, withholding paychecks to Kevin Durant. If he decides he just doesn't want to play, they don't have to pay him. When Ben Simmons, it's a different story. Like, you're going to have to pay Ben Simmons because it's, in America, you're protected at a certain point because it becomes a mental health issue.
Well, yeah, but whether they're paying him or not, right? Like remove that aside. If KD chose not to play for whatever reason, even if he's still getting paid, and they just say go away from the team until we move you, or if he says I'm just not going to play until you move me, however that works, even if he's still getting paid, I still feel it's a staring contest the Brooklyn Nets ultimately win by not putting him on another roster to compete against them. Or you know what I mean? Or especially control for 4 years. Like if you're playing that long game, it would suck in a way because to not have KD, everyone loses in that regard. But it's just I can't see KD doing that. I just don't think that's. I don't think he's that type of guy.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess.
I think the tough thing from the Nets' point of view is like they're gonna lose the trade. It's Kevin Durant. You're not getting a player as good. And I think it's just hard to accept that you're gonna get the short end of the stick this time around. Like there's 3 other players in the league that compare to Kevin Durant. Like you're gonna lose the trade, and I think the Rudy Gobert trade probably did really mess with the market because, like, you look at someone like Gobert and it's like, well, shoot, they just got 4 first-round picks. Also, the guy they just took in the first round, if you want to call it 5, and a swap. Like, then what the heck is Kevin Durant worth? And I think it's just like trying to compare those two makes for a complicated market because I think that Gobert got overpaid and he's close to, like, what they got in return for him is close to the max that you can get from any team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem that we have is that there was one Gobert deal and there might not be another. And people have to understand that, like, the market, sure, it spiked, and all of a sudden there are a bunch of teams who think that their players are worth more. But it's kind of like if you walk into a neighborhood and someone says, hey, we'll offer $2.5 million for that house on the lake. And then the house next door says, oh, man, you can have my house for $2.5 million. And they say, okay, we'll take that. Well, then the other house is like, okay, we'll take it too. It's like, well, we already took the other deal. It's like, okay, well, then you go and you put your house on the market for $2.5 million because the house next door just sold for that. And now no one wants to buy it. I mean, sometimes there is only one deal. There is only one deal that's ridiculous and stupid. And, the Danny Ainge could keep asking for another one of these deals.
Yeah.
But he might not get another one. There might not be another one that looks like that.
And if your house comps well to that, then refinance if you can't make that deal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. But you understand what I'm saying. Like,
right.
You're kind of in this weird situation where it's like, okay, I don't know that that there's going to be the deal that Danny Ainge wants for Donovan Mitchell or the deal that they clearly want. And we keep coming back to this. It's weird to have a market where you kind of have one superstar and then you have one like all-star and a really good young player in Donovan Mitchell, but you have 2 teams that want something totally different for those. And so you have a team like the Nets that want to stay relevant, and you have a team like the Jazz that want to blow it up. And so one team is looking for, 6 first-round picks, and the other one, they're asking for Tatum and Brown. It's like, okay, all of it's just wild how different the market is for 2 different teams, I guess is my point.
Yeah. And I think even, I think the Gobert thing was an overpay, but I think, DeJounte Murray's deal somewhat falls into this. People are just throwing first-rounders like crazy, and it just makes it hard to gauge. DeJounte Murray got 3 first-rounders and a swap. He's a really good player, but Kevin Durant is miles better than a DeJounte Murray. And if Murray got 4, it's a weird time. So many people are throwing out first-round picks like it's nothing, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, the Kings gave up a first-round pick for Kevin Huerter. And, I mean, it's a lot to give up for a guy who averages 12 points a game. So, I keep saying, and people keep thinking that I don't like Kevin Huerter. I love Kevin Huerter. I think he's, a fellow Ginger, and Gingers unite, and I'm super excited to see, what he brings to the table as an elite 3-point shooter and stuff. But
you're gonna walk in the room and you're gonna look at him and you're just go, "Hey."
Well, people they call him my son. For my little dude, he's a redhead, but we're not redhead. We're strawberry blondes. We're not redheads. Okay. Kevin Huerter's a full-fledged redhead. Anyway, my point is that you gave up a first-round pick, and not only a first-round pick, but you tied up 5 years of first-round picks for a guy who averages 12 points a game. That's a tough pill to swallow, and I know you can't just give away unprotected picks. But yeah, it's weird. First round picks are getting thrown all over the place. So, and it seems like OKC seems to catch all of them. Well, now OKC and the Knicks, they seem to catch all of the first round picks. They'll take them all.
Big butterfly net. And they catch them all.
Big giant butterfly net. Okay, Brenden, did you prepare any facts or caps, or you?
I did not. I don't know if that gave me away.
Man.
No, Mr. Ham. you can't do it every time.
No, that's funny. I was laughing because it sounded like you were referencing Jeff Spicoli from Fastest Times at Richmond High, which is a movie from the early 80s.
From the 80s.
Brenden. I think
I got one for you. I've heard the name. I got one for you. Fact or cap, gentlemen? We'll start with Mr. Strawberry Blonde over here.
Yeah.
Davion Mitchell will close 20 games for the Sacramento Kings this season. 20 or more. Fact or cap?
Fact.
Really?
I'll tell you why. Number one, I think he'll get an opportunity for at least 10 on his own. And the other thing, De'Aaron Fox has only played 81 games one time in his career, I believe. He's going to miss games, and Davion will be your starter and will finish games.
Yeah, it's hard. That's hard to argue with. I think James talked me into that one. I was already leaning fact, but with that kind of analysis, I think I'm there.
Boom.
I could have rethought the number. With injuries, it definitely makes sense. But in a healthy lineup, how often do you think Davion is closing?
I think it's something you'll see quite often. I think it depends on the matchup, though. I mean, I think it depends on the team too, and
depends on the points. He could finish games that you pull Fox because you got your ass kicked, or you could pull Fox because you won games. Yeah, I mean, you're dominating somebody.
Yeah. I guess more so, thinking of like clutch moments in a close game. Like, I struggle to think that you're pulling Fox. I think it would have to be for like Herter or, I mean, I don't think HB. It'd be Herter or Keegan in my mind. Like, I don't know. I could see games where Damian Lillard is out there, where Steph Curry is out there, like these dominant point guards, and Davion has been having a good night against them, where maybe that makes sense. But
when will Keon Ellis play? Come on now.
Well, that's just
that's your moment right there for Keon Ellis to step up and stop somebody.
Yeah, I figured I didn't need to ask the question. It was obvious already.
Did you agree
with 20? I think that I will say fact when it comes to Davion, right, for the 20 closing games. I'll say fact because you did get me on the injuries. When guys are out, I think that Davion will be one of those top options. And De'Aaron does miss a handful of games. But I think when they're healthy, I think you might see like Monk closing games more often because he's on fire. Like I don't know. A lot depends on how much progress we see from Davion shooting.
No, Brenden.
Monk will have a game here and there, though. If the 3-point progress is there with Davion, it's a different story. But I'm a skeptical.
I'm with you. So I keep like people overreact to certain. Like if we're discussing like Chima Moneke, KZ Okpala, like when we're having that discussion, it's not because we think that those are like star NBA players. We're having the discussion because they're part of the rotation. They're part of the team, and we discuss every part of the team. And I think people like, oh man, all these Kings fans think that that Malik Monk is so much better than he is. And I heard this from a Lakers fan the other day. And like, first up, I don't think any of us have said, oh my gosh, like Malik Monk is going to average 25 a game, and like this is the end all be all. The Kings like got to steal. I hate to tell a Laker fan this, but the Lakers got worse by losing Malik Monk. Like Malik Monk is a better player than Lonnie Walker. There's no question about that. So, like, no, he's not a game changer, but he can be a really good player in a rotation of players. He can be your leading scorer off the bench, certainly for this team. But we have to be realistic about who and what he is. I mean, You're hoping that he's Bobby Jackson. You're not hoping that he's, Mike Bibby. Like, I think Kings fans are being honest with themselves in that, and understand the expectations with each of these players. Maybe I'm crazy, and I know there are the good people of Portugal believe that Nemias Keita is a frontline starter, but
I wonder why.
Well, it's because I put out videos all the time. It's because every time he does anything, I tweet something. Sean, what do you mean? I know why. No, but I mean, you have to feed the beast and let them see their guy, but at the same time, we're realistic about who and what each of these players are. I don't think anyone we're expecting to just become someone that they're not. The only guy that, realistically, is Herter, who I think all of us agree could average well over 12 points a game as a Sacramento King. Am I wrong? Everyone else, we kind of know. I mean, you expect some change in what Davion Mitchell did statistically. You expect Keegan Murray to have some sort of rookie progression and become better. But outside of that, the one player that we think that can improve greatly statistically is probably Kevin Herter.
Yeah.
Right? Am I crazy?
Agreed. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Keegan's the one that you still. I mean, he's a question mark because he's a rookie. That's just natural. So you don't know, quite. You know what he can bring to the game, but you don't know statistically where that's going to be. So I would caution a little bit there. But that's about the only one that we're really anticipating a huge leap from would be Kevin Herter based off of more touches alone. I mean, he played with a guy who was a bulk shooter, and you're going to be needing a lot of shooting on this team, and you don't have a guy that's chucking 25, 30 shots a game. So
interesting.
There you go.
I have one more for you guys if you want.
All right, Factor Cap, what do you got for us?
All right, quick one. Quick hitter. Domantas Sabonis will have at least 7 triple-doubles next season. Last year, he managed 5. The year before, he had 9. Sean Cunningham, at least 7 triple-doubles for Domantas Sabonis. Factor Cap.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say...
That's a big number.
That's a big number. I'll say fact. I think it's entirely possible.
I think it's entirely possible as well.
The guy's a walking double-double, so that part's easy. And he's kicking out to more shooting than he's ever had in than he's ever had. He didn't have anything last year, but so yeah, I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I agree, but 7 is a little high of a number.
It's pretty big.
I went between the 5 and 9. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's 6, 7, 8, 9. He'll have around there. So, yep.
I'll go with fact as well.
All right.
Oh.
Yeah. Why not?
Excellent.
Keon's going to hit all those shots that he times them up to.
There it is. On the back of Keon Ellis.
What's the over-under of how many games Keon Ellis actually plays? Are we ready to say that
in Stockton
yet?
Or?
In Sacramento.
I think this is the end of the episode, Sean.
Yeah. Let me marinate on that one.
12 is the over-under, Brenden.
Total? Yeah. No, it's a tough one. I'm going to be in Stockton a lot.
There it is.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Well, I mean, if you're getting a tattoo on your left chest, you need to make sure that you got a good representation. A small one on your ankle.
Eyebrow. Oh. Yeah, something like that.
That's reserved for the PPP movement, Brennan, above the eyebrow.
I don't know if I want you to clarify what you're talking about here.
That is the Willie Cauley-Stein
tattoo.
Gotcha. Yeah. We're still not sure. All right. Do we have any final questions? And by final questions, because someone asked whether Sean understood what final question, I mean, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. What final thoughts means is whatever you want to put out there as a final thought. So, Brennan, we'll start with...
thought.
Yeah, Brennan, we'll start with you. Final thoughts?
I just hate when you ask someone about their final thoughts and they don't keep it on topic and just start ranting about themselves. But that's all I really got. Nothing else on my end.
My final thought is I love how many people love to tell us what this podcast is. like someone was saying, "Oh, you need your own Twitter account." No, we don't. We each have our own individual Twitter accounts. Why the fuck would we get a Kings Beat podcast Twitter account? That just makes no goddamn sense. Like, why would we do that? That's individually just that doesn't make any sense. And then people go, "Oh, like even me, your final thought, like, oh, it should be on brand with Kings Beat." Really? Tell me what else this podcast should be. Like, who cares? Who cares? Do you see? Hey, I do this because I like it. I do this, the minute that someone tells me what I should do, I'm not. So we talk about the Kings primarily we're at an hour 20 right now. God knows why. It's August 11th. We should have been done at an hour, but
or like
here we are.
Minutes.
I love talking to these two gentlemen. It's fun. I have a blast doing it. And you know what? If you're talking Kings 24/7, get a life. So here we are. My final thoughts are just that.
I'll add
That's
this
why.
too.
But by the way, hold on. I must say that I'm just teasing. I wanted to turn heel for a minute there, but I actually love comments. Like when people are too nice, I go, "Why are they being too nice?" And then when people just absolutely slam, I actually kind of get amusement out of it. So, people are people at the end of the the whatever entices somebody to want to actually comment or make a reply anyway is. I don't have that in me, but I'm glad that they do because they're willing to participate in the show, and it's whatever they want it to feel like. So I know I would just ranted over there. I was actually just trying to be a character. I love when people do that. I really do. So keep doing it.
And I'll add this too. I think like the Kings Beat specifically, like our goal between the off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hours and between that and the podcast. It's to show a different side of us as well, because we're people who cover the team that you love. And I think it's good that we show like parts of ourselves outside of that. So you actually know that we are people, like what we do, that Sean goes to concerts all the time, that Molly runs around in the background of
how many
Brennan's
boats we
house.
have.
How many boats James has. All of these
we need
things.
to learn more about Brenden is I think what we need to ultimately get down to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think the next podcast we need 20 questions for Brenden.
Oh, so Sean has to come up with his own version of Factor Cap or
Oh no. It's
or Tuesday Overreactions, or
no. It'll be my own franchise called Get to Know the Nunes.
We could do an episode for each of us.
There we go. But I think it's good. Like we're an open book a lot of the times, and I think it's good because you're getting to see a different side of us that you're just not going to get to see like with us tweeting or reading our work or anything else. So all the work that Sean does at Fox 40, all the work that Brenden does at the King's Pulse podcast and the King's Herald. I just think like that's what this is about. That's why we do final thoughts.
Isn't there a third Brenden? Don't you have another one?
I freelanced for the B a little bit.
That's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. On occasion. So no, I think it's good. I think we're pulling back the curtain a little bit and letting you see a different side of ourselves. And if you don't like that and you don't like us talking for 8 to 10 minutes before, you can skip it. You can keep demanding that I put in time codes, and sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't. It's a matter of time and energy and all that stuff. So
I'm sorry. Are we paying for the podcast here? Is this free? This is free, right?
It is free.
Okay.
I mean, it's part of the King's Beat, but it's also free. Like anyone can watch it on YouTube. Anyone can listen.
Right.
So yeah. So you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit.
Chef's choice, right?
That's right. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the King's Beat podcast. We'll be back on Tuesday. We may discuss like our favorite alcoholic beverages, adult beverages. Maybe we'll make beverages right here on the show. I don't know. We'll do whatever the hell we want. That's the point of this conversation. So for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and the King's Pulse podcasts, Brenden Nunes. I'm James Ham, Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. I'll be on ESPN 1320 all day on Friday, and then all next week, Monday through Friday, with Kenny Caraway. So make sure to drop by and say hi over on ESPN 1320. It's good seeing you guys. We'll be back on Tuesday.